gotta admit, that would be pretty good.
Actually, I'm going to back this up.
And I just take the screenshots, and I'll also turn to the video.
Okay, last thing that we need to talk about today is fertilization and then contraception. Okay, sperm cells straight from the male body are not able to fertilize an egg. They have not gone through the entire process that activates them. So, sperm need something called capacitation, which has two steps. The first step happens in the male body, where you have secretions from the seminal vesicles. But the second part of capacitation is actually introduction to the female reproductive tract. This was a major stumbling block when they were first trying to create
Artificial babies.
no, not artificial, create zygotes in vitro in a test tube babies, whatever you want to call them. Because the sperm cells were not able, if you just take them and an ova and mix them together, they're not able to actually fertilize it. So there's something about the female reproductive tract. We don't know what it is. This is still kind of a mystery to us, how this second part of capacitation takes place, what it is about the conditions in the female reproductive tract that actually activate the sperm. But we know it's a necessary step. Without that step, sperm are not able to go through the process of fertilization. Okay. Now, fertilization usually takes place in the upper third of the fallopian tubes. Kind of talked about that before. The fertilized zygote is has to be kind of taken down out of the fallopian tubes for it to develop properly. But from introduction to that fertilization event, it can take anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours for sperm to make the trip. So not exactly fast. When you consider how small they are, 30 minutes, that's fairly quick. But of course, as we talked about yesterday, contractions in the uterus can help move those sperm towards the fallopian tubes. Okay. Now, when we look at how many actually are able to make it to the fertilization site, you see why it's important that males produce so many sperm. A typical introduction is going to be about 2 million sperm for a single event. However, only about, 10,000? 10,000. Only about 10,000 actually make it to the oviduct, the fallopian tubes. So it's a very small percentage of the actual sperm that are in a single ejaculation that are able to make it. And out of those 10,000, only about 100 actually are going to reach the ova.
Survival of the fittest. Or don't want, I'm not sure.
Okay, now, it may seem like, well, it only takes one, but that's not actually true. If only a single sperm makes it to the ova, no fertilization will occur, because it takes multiple sperm cells to actually break down the protective layer that surrounds it. And so that means if you have a sperm count of 20 million per milliliter or less, you're effectively sterile. So when you hear about low sperm count, what's happening is there's just not enough of those sperm that are able to make it in. And so not enough of them make it to the ova and actually cause the fertilization. It can cause the fertilization. So that, again, it's not like a single one needs to get there. You need multiple sperms to actually make it. So if you lower the sperm count too much, just on the law of averages, you're not going to have enough to cause fertilization. Okay. So this is a electron micrograph of sperm cells trying to fertilize an ova, and it's not just a race. In fact, the first sperm that get there won't cause the fertilization of it. So I mean, you hear sometimes, "Oh, you were the fastest one." No, actually, the fastest ones, all they do is kind of help get the egg cell ready. The cell. On the outside of the cell, there's the structure, or these little pieces of structure called the cornea, or the corona radiata.
Trouble.
It's Mr. Roark. Okay. Yep. I think.
Have fun presenting to little kids.
Okay, and so this layer around the outside of the ova helps to protect it, but it is a barrier for the sperm to get through. Now, each sperm cell is going to carry enzymes inside of it. And when they make contact with the corona radiata, they're going to release those enzymes, and those enzymes will start to break down that layer, and it'll start providing gaps in there. At that point, once there's gaps in the layer, then the first sperm cell that is able to make it through the actual cell membrane, sorry, couldn't think of that word. The first sperm cell that gets through the cellular membrane and into the ova, that will be the one that is actually going to fertilize and merge with the egg, with the ova. Right? So it takes the enzymes, a concerted effort of multiple sperm cells to break that down. And that's why a single sperm cell can't do it. One sperm cell comes there, it's not going to have enough enzymes to release to actually break down that layer, and there's going to be no fertilization. Okay. Now, if you remember when we talked the other day, that ova has not gone through that second stage of meiosis even yet. At this point, it is still locked in prophase 2. It still has to do a whole other division of the nucleus to separate the chromosomes to form another polar body, which won't do anything, and then the chromosomes that will actually be part of the fertilization. Once that sperm cell breaks through, and it actually is absorbed by the cytoplasm, that's what stimulates meiosis to finish. So when the sperm cell is absorbed, meiosis can finish. So this is a cell division that has been set up years beforehand. Just been waiting. Once that sperm cell is absorbed, they can finish. And then you end up with the male, with the chromosomes from the male, from the sperm cell, the chromosomes from the female, and those two chromosome patches will fuse. And then development can finish up. So amphimixis, or amphimixis, sorry, is the joining of the DNA from the gametes. And once this has happened, once amphimixis has happened, then we for sure have a zygote. An official zygote that can then go through all of the development and become an embryo and a fetus.
What was that word?
Amphimixis. That's an I there. Now we're not going to go through all the stages of development they do in the book, but I want to focus on the actual fertilization. But I guess the last thing that we need to put down is that this then can attach to the uterine wall. Binding of the zygote to the uterine wall is then going to signal to the female reproductive cycle to change the hormones so that ovulation and menstruation doesn't happen anymore, and also start building placenta to encompass the cells and create that protective space for the new development. Okay? That's all I have as far as that goes. The other thing we're going to talk about today is contraception. For that, I've got a couple of circuits. There we go. So this chart shows, oops. It's being a little funky. This chart is going to show the different rates for the different types of contraception. If I can get the thing to move again. Maybe a little too small to see. So the percents here are basically rates of pregnancy based on each of the different types. Okay, this is driving me crazy. So, if you use no birth control, about 85% of the time, you're going to end up pregnant. There's different types of oral contraceptives as far as hormonal contraceptives out there. A combination pill is going to have both progestin and estrogen. A combination pill. And you can see we have two different rates here. We've got typical use and we've got perfect use. The problem with pills is you can forget to take them. So most people will miss one here or there. And because of that, you're going to have a higher percentage of pregnancy in those cases. And see, perfect use, if you never miss any of your pills and you're getting them in the right order all the time, then it's got a pretty low rate of pregnancy. Okay. Sterilization for females, this would be, we hear it as tying the tubes. So that would actually be surgery of the fallopian tubes so that the released ova do not actually make it, or the sperm can't make it to them. Anyway, sterilization for males, that would be the vasectomy. Now, some vasectomies are going to fail because of the surgical procedures. They're much more efficient than they were before. My father-in-law had 2 different vasectomies and had kids after both of them. So, but today's surgical procedures, they've got different ways of clamping them off, and it's not going to fail as often. We can see comparatively the vasectomy for the males is actually more works better. The word that I want to use is not coming. Okay, we've got condoms for males and females. A female condom is not as easy because it has to be specifically fit, whereas male condoms just kind of come in different sizes. You can see, as far as typical use goes, we still have fairly high rates of pregnancies. The biggest reason that condoms tend to be pushed is because they're one of the few things on this list that also prevent STDs. Most of these different types of contraception are not going to do anything for STDs. Condoms will prevent STDs as well. So when you take that into account and used with another birth control method, it can be very useful. Okay, IUDs is an intrauterine device. Intrauterine. Okay, in one type, basically it's just a piece of copper, and the introduction of copper into the uterus actually makes the system think that there's something wrong with that, and that it isn't a good place to create a zygote, a place for the zygote, and so it's going to actually change the hormonal levels because of that. So just by the introduction of a small piece of copper, it can actually cause the ovulation cycle to stop. Other intrauterine devices, hormonal ones, actually have a little bit of hormone in there that's released at certain times, well, consistently, but throughout the entire cycle, and they'll work for years. They can be implanted and work for multiple years up until they can be removed. So these are fairly, they work fairly well. Of course, the problem is that it does take seeing a doctor to be able to use them. You can't just do it yourself. At least it's not something that you should do yourself. Okay, the patch would be much like the oral contraceptives. It's just released through a patch, so you don't have to remember to take pills or anything like that. Question? Okay. The implant is going to be the same sort of thing, except it's going to be injected under the skin and it releases hormones. So sort of like the patch, but it's inside. So you don't have to worry about it falling off or getting wet or anything like that. There is a little bit of risk in all of these hormonal things. There was a girl that I knew from high school who had the implant, and they think it caused a heart attack. And she had other problems as well. Every one of these hormonal ones, there's going to be a little bit of risk as far as side effects go. Okay. Fertility awareness, that basically comes down to knowing when you're going to ovulate and making sure that you don't have sexual intercourse anywhere in that period where fertilization could actually happen. We can see for most people, I don't track their cycles very good, 24%. If you use it perfectly, though, 24 to 5% is a fairly effective way of making sure that pregnancy doesn't happen. Withdrawal, that would be just making sure that during sexual intercourse, the sperm does not get injected into the vagina. It's called pulling out. So the main thing that you should see when you look at all of these is that most of these fall heavily on the female. There's not a whole lot of male contraceptive choices out there. I mean, you got vasectomy, you got condoms.
Hey, you got the power switch.
Power switch, yes. That's a brand new thing, so we don't have any data on how well that is. I mean, I don't know how they're going to set that up. I feel like there could be accidental switches, depending on certain activities, but I could be wrong. However, there is new data out that they may be releasing a hormonal, well, it wouldn't necessarily be hormonal, but it would be a chemical oral contraceptive for males to take that would put more of the, at least some of the responsibility on guys for making sure that they're taking that. The main thing that I would look at is that in every one of these cases, it would be better to use a couple different methods than a single one. In every case, you're going to have a better chance, or a worse chance of conceiving if you're using more than one method. Alright, that's pretty much all I got for this chapter.